Hi, my name's Dayle Adams of Planning Ahead of Time, and this week I'm speaking to Katie. Katie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you, Dale. Yes. Well, thank you for having me back, first of all. So I'm Katie Costello. I'm a soul midwife, a funeral celebrant, and a death educator, based in West Sussex. And all of my work is based around death, dying, and end of life care.
Well, we've already just had a quick chat about all of the things you're up to at the moment, and there's an awful lot going on with you, isn't there?
Yeah. Um, so I've been doing this. I've been working with the dying for 12 years. I worked at my local hospice for 8 years. I worked in community palliative care before that. So and all of my years and all of my intention and my mission has been to offer obviously the best end of life care possible personally. And then obviously I moved into soul midwifery, the one-to-one support, then obviously supporting people funerals. But in all of those years, having sat with hundreds, if not maybe even thousands now, of people that have died, what I realized was the education is lacking. And I think anybody that has gone through some kind of death or dying will know that. Not only we don't even want to talk about it. So if we don't want to talk about it, chances are we're not prepared, whether it be for our own death or for those that we're looking after or caring for. So the education thing became a real focus for me. So back in 2023, I designed and had accredited a death education program. And it's very much death education from a human perspective. It's not clinical, it's not jargon. It's very much what we see, what we experience with our eyes, what our physical body goes through, and just sharing the reality of it, but from a very heart-led perspective as well. And then alongside that, what that has also evolved now in my work is to further consultancy with businesses. Because again, so many companies I mean, I've supported HR companies, finance companies, construction companies, things that aren't necessarily related to death and dying, but if you employ human beings,
Yeah,
like this is relevant. You know,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
what I'm doing now, and this is what I don't think we understand. We think, oh well, I'm an HR company or I'm a finance company. People that deal outside of work have have all the support. But actually, when we spend most of our time at work. So a lot of my services now are providing the death education, but also just general consultancy about how to better support people's workforces, how to better understand somebody's situation where there might be a carer, how to be aware of how to approach the difficult subjects of death, dying, grief, and bereavement with people that may be terminally ill themselves but still working. Companies and businesses that there's nothing in place to actually emotionally support our management, our leaders, our supervisors, those people that might be supporting the teams or them themselves. There's nothing to actually highlight how to be human in those situations. Everything does get so professional and so clinical. My role in all the companies I've worked in or been invited in is essentially been me reminding them how to be a human being, reminding them that actually everybody deals with this differently, reminding them that actually just because you've seen one death on Holby City, it's not always like that, or reminding them that their own experience then doesn't you can't project that onto other people, and actually you can't assume that every experience is the same. So there's just so many levels and so many layers, and so that's the whole long and short of it. Was everything I'm doing now is very much about sharing the education, getting out there to businesses to offer whatever help that they need in whatever way. I'm helping write policies and procedures for death, dying, grief, and bereavement. So actually, companies are better equipped to say to their people, actually, this is the process we go through. Talking about phased return to work, changing workstations, and all just the little things that actually companies don't maybe think about when somebody's got a lot going on. Say whether it's themselves or somebody they're looking after or somebody's just died, that when they're coming back to work, they might need to think about. And the education and that kind of comes hand in hand. Being able to support companies to better understand death, that when one of their teams come to them and says, my person had this awful death in a nursing home because they starved for weeks, they didn't feed them. Whereas actually, if everybody had that understanding to then, as a business, be able to sit there with your colleague and your staff and go, but do you understand that when people die, that they stop eating? That's very much a natural part of the process. Just those very simple conversations, not that everybody has to be an expert, but if everybody has another level of awareness, that in the workplace is so valuable. And that can then prompt another conversation with somebody like myself or a doctor or the counsellor. Do you know what I mean? So actually, it's crucial that we all have this kind of knowledge. We all have this understanding of death and dying on a very human level. Like I said, it's not about me telling everybody to be experts or everybody suddenly having, extra diplomas coming out there is. It's about just remembering we're all going to die. This is what's involved, and we can use that information to better prepare ourselves and everybody that we work with, are in a relationship with, that we come across, that we connect with. So I'm on a bit of a one-woman mission, and I hope to do a lot of that at the Care Show. There's the Care Show coming up at the Excel in London at the end of April, beginning of May, and I've got a stand sharing all of this stuff to hopefully connect with care agencies, nursing homes, like I said, community care projects, all sorts of people in any walk of life with care. Because fundamentally, if we're needing extra help and support, chances are in that world, we're not coming back from that. So actually, what do we do then when our service users, customers, patients become more poorly? Again, there isn't the training out there. So that's what I hope to help with mine.
Well,
Sorry, you asked and you got a very long-winded answer.
I love your answer because it's so true. You very
Mm.
the answer was focused on companies, but the fact is, education is for everybody, isn't it? Because what you were saying is the more people know, generally, the more we can have discussions around dying, death, loss, grief, bereavement, the more everybody can help each other and then can be more kind, compassionate, and human when that happens. Because often people just don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to help. They don't want to talk about death. It's probably the least used word because everybody's so concerned
Yeah.
about it that they won't speak about it. And then it becomes something that is sort of swept away. And so when somebody is going through
Yeah.
a loss, they want to talk about it. There's various ways to grieve, and as you say, grief is different for everybody. And a lot of the time, people do actually push their own feelings and thoughts about death and dying onto other people who are grieving. I mean, I've experienced that quite a lot. So,
Yeah, and do you know what? It's something that I observe a lot in healthcare. Even, whether it be a hospice or a hospital, like hospitals, we go to hospitals to get better. So when somebody that's dying ends up in hospital, or somebody is under the hospital care, but it's they're not getting better, there's nothing in the hospital they can do. It often ends up being, oh, okay, well, sorry, you need to go over there now. And then like that door's shut, or the hospital don't recognize what's going on for that person. So they kind of think, oh, okay, well, we'll just leave that. And even in, say, a hospice will have obviously, highly expert and trained and wonderful people. But sometimes even in a hospice, we assume somebody should be feeling a certain way because they're under the hospice. And or whatever it is, we always make assumptions in life. We assume a lot, we come with our own agenda, we judge, and we always have an expectation. And a big part of my training is to help people try and get rid of all of that. To understand that, just because you feel a certain way, for example, I often get called in to support families because one of them maybe won't talk about death. So it might be the person that's dying that says, I don't want to go there, leave me alone. And the family are like, we need to know what to do. We need to know how you feel. Equally, it might be the person that's dying that actually is very accepting of their death and very open. And the family are like, don't talk that way. I can't handle it. I'm not going there. So I'll often get invited into families to help that very battle. And that is essentially what we just said. People end up projecting their own thoughts, or they withhold their own thoughts for fear of upsetting the other one.
yes, absolutely.
So, and actually, we've got to realize that we've got to realize that these conversations are difficult no matter which way you look at them. Somebody's dying, and that is potentially sad or difficult. Now, not everyone's a loved one, though, remember. So, even in family situations, you might have a seemingly lovely couple who actually hate each other. So, you can't assume that there's a lot of love. You can't assume that everything's lovely and fluffy. But even then, you still find people are projecting their own thoughts and feelings. We do that. We're human. And that's not a criticism. That's just kind of how we come at every situation with our own bank of experiences and emotions and memories, and reflections. So everything we approach in life it comes loaded, and that lens is full of everything that we've experienced. But when it comes to death, we have to be so aware of that to make sure that we are not encroaching on that person's experience. It's their death. It's the end of their life. Or for the family, they're losing their person. It's not necessarily going to be the same as you when you lost your person. It's not going to be the same as what you've seen on telly or what you know of your partner when that happened to their family. Or, we've got to scrap all of that and just focus on that person and listen to how they feel. We've got to be able to be okay sitting in the discomfort. We've got to be okay sitting in the depths of despair with somebody. We've got to be okay with the fact that they may see it completely differently from us. And we may think they're wrong, or we may think they should be in a certain place emotionally or mentally. You've got to get rid of all of that. And that's again the big thing that I'm trying to get across with my training and the consultancy. There are so many light bulbs going off for people when I'm talking to management, going, oh, actually, and it's not a criticism, it's this awareness opens up. And then you suddenly go, oh, I can support somebody now from a more compassionate place, understanding that actually when I'm listening to them and they're talking about the fact that maybe they're drinking more than normal, and you're sat there going, why would you do that? Why would you drink more when you're already upset? God, you can then have compassion to go, this is their grief, this is their way of dealing with it. And actually, I don't need to judge that or assume anything other than the fact that just listen and go, well, that must be really challenging for you. That's it. You just need to sit in it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the dying. We've got to stop getting, when we get to the point where our body is actively dying, when we get to the point that there's no more treatment and our body is shutting down, we still want to find something to fix or do or someone to blame and maybe there are things to be addressed, but fundamentally, we just need to sit and be. Or if we can't sit and be, it's okay to leave. Do you know what I mean? You can't do anything at that point. It's about the presence and people feeling safe and heard and loved and nurtured and soothed and supported. And it's not about you. But if your feelings are strong, you're also okay to go away and deal with them however you need to. So I've gone off on a piece. I could do this all up there. We're talking about this stuff. I just think it's so, there are so many angles and so many ways to look at it. And I don't think people think about half of this stuff.
No.
And the conversations I have go down more of these roads because it's the stuff that nobody even thinks about because nobody knows to think about it.
And what I often find really shocking, and it happens a lot online, is somebody puts up that they've, their mum or dad has died, and then other people jump in. Well, my dad died and I felt like this. And then it's, well, my mum died and she died like this. And it's as though it suddenly sort of ramps into a bit of a, well, you shouldn't really feel that way because actually my death was worse than the one that you're experiencing, or yours is only a pet and mine was my mum, or yours was only, an uncle and mine's my son. And there seems to be this slight competition that can come out around grief. And that's really sad when that happens, because you think this person has literally just said, my son died, or this has happened. And they just need to share, and they need somebody to do exactly what you've just said, which is just to listen, to be with them, to allow them to bring that out in whatever whether they want to shout about it, cry about it, be quiet about it, whatever way they need to grieve, they need to be allowed to do that. Or if they want to talk about their death, they need to be able to say, this is how I'm feeling about dying, without somebody else coming in with their own view and turning it into a little bit of a competition, which it really gets me when I see it online, because it happens a lot online.
A lot. And do you know what's interesting? I had this conversation. There are two wonderful ladies, Karen and Beck. They do a podcast called Room to Grieve. Now, both of them lost a child. So they are using this podcast as a kind of platform to talk about grief, to talk about death very openly, to educate themselves and others. And, they're on a bit of a mission as well. But we had this conversation the other day. Now, I've heard it a lot lately, this hierarchy of grief. Well, my person was here and you only had lost a pet. And we have these societal expectations of somebody's grief should be determined by the relationship to that person.
Yes.
It's all irrelevant. Grief is grief.
Agreed.
It's hard. It's the hardest thing we go through. It's the heaviest, most darkest, challenging thing. And how can you say to somebody that they don't deserve to be grieving because it was only a pet? Or how can you say that, that was your parent, I've lost a child? Like, both are hideous, but we can't be saying to anybody, my grief is worse than yours, because all grief is challenging. Of course, different situations you might deem to be worse than others, but we're very British like that. We always say things like either, oh, I should count myself lucky, it could be a lot worse, people have it worse off than me. Or we then go down the other road of, well, you don't understand because I've gone through the worst thing. Like, that's part of human nature. We can't necessarily take that away. But I think what we do need to do is allow people the space to grieve in whatever way they need to for whatever relationship that they had, again, with no judgment. But then even if we do that, and then we open up a space for people to talk about grief and people are sharing their stories, it still happens where then people are told that they're grieving wrong. So I know that Karen and Beck won't mind me sharing this, but they are dealing with the death of their children in in a very open way, in a very blunt, honest way. They're both quite characters. And some forums and spaces where they're trying to support or share, they get met with a very different response. So even people that are grieving will judge other people for grieving. Now, I think that comes from because we're grieving, we struggle to understand other people's emotions, and that's fine. But we've got to just let people be. Just because one person wants to deal with grief one way doesn't mean they're right or wrong. And just because somebody else is doing it another way, it's all okay. None of us are pros at this grieving stuff. None of us want to be expert in how to deal with this. This is the most hideous thing. So, we need to get rid of the hierarchy idea. It's irrelevant. You feel however you need to feel for whatever a connection it is that you've lost. But equally, remember that then when people might be going through a seemingly similar situation, that you can't tell anybody else how to grieve. Like that there is no right or wrong way to do this. When it comes to grief, we all just trudge through it in the very best way that we can. And it's literally a step at a time. So I think it's really interesting in society. We have this expectation of death. We don't want to sit, we don't want to talk about it. We can't deal with grief, of course, because it's hideous, but it happens. It's the only thing that's going to happen. And one thing I really am on a mission with is to help and try and open up these conversations. I speak very openly, very candidly. I've had my own loss, my own grief, my own experiences. I've seen hundreds of people die. Like I said, I'm hoping to just share what I've learned with people and share the reality of it from a very human perspective, not to tell anybody that I'm right or wrong, but to open up people's thought processes or to open up people's feelings or to open up conversations to go, oh, hadn't thought of that. Or, oh, didn't know that. That's interesting. Or, oh my God, I think you're absolutely wrong and I really disagree. Great. If you found something that you really agree with, then on the flip side of that, it's a valuable conversation.
Yeah.
So, but we've got to talk. We've just got to talk more. We can't hide from this stuff. And I see, and that you mentioned a situation you knew about. I see what happens when we don't have the conversations. I see what happens with the people that are left behind, or with then the really tricky situations that are left to be dealt with when somebody is dying and conversations hadn't happened, or then obviously after they've died and people don't know the answers and go, where the heck do I start?
Yeah,
But we
absolutely.
go, oh, I wish I'd talked more. So do it then. Like talk now while we're well, while you're calm, while you're rational, while you're able to look at this from a clear perspective, rather than, oh, now I need to talk when I'm already starting to grieve, anticipatory grief. I'm already starting to stress. Everything's getting harder. And if it's you, I'm struggling with this. I might be in pain. And now people are asking me about my advanced care planning and where I want to die. Like
And
it's
trying
impossible to
to,
have.
yeah, trying to have those discussions with somebody who is dying to say, okay, we know you're dying. Now we need to know this, and now we need to know about the money, and now we need to know about your care, and now we need to know about your funeral. What a time to do it. And then I've had people say, well, I didn't really want to talk to my mom or dad about it because I thought they'd think I was after their money. And I said, but you are, you know, you are after their money,
Well,
not because you're greedy and you want it,
organize it.
but you want to make sure it goes where your parents would have always wanted it to go. But trying to have those conversations when people are at that stage of their life is very difficult. When people are fit and healthy, it is an awful lot easier to talk about it
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
not current reality. So with
And
the, sorry,
sorry.
Karen.
No, go on. I was going to go off on a tangent. No, carry on. We could be here all day otherwise. I'll be like, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I was just going to say, so with obviously the experience that you've had, how do you feel that that influences your work as a funeral celebrant? Because I know that you only do funeral celebrancy, not weddings, etc. How is it affected by your knowledge?
Oh, do you know what? I was a sole midwife first, and then the funeral celebrancy came afterwards because I was asked to do so many people's service, read a eulogy, share a poem, share a few words. I was asked to get involved because I was involved with their death, and it meant a lot to families, and obviously meant a huge amount to me. And because I'm a talker, and I've done a lot of public speaking, I then started to think, actually, like I could actually do this. Now, I didn't realize that actually anybody can lead a funeral. You don't need any training. So you don't have to have training to be a funeral celebrant. Anybody can stand up there legally and perform a service. But I wanted the training. So I went through that process. And one of the reasons I did it was, like I said, because I knew I could help from another level of understanding. And I didn't want to do weddings. All of my work is end of life. That's my purpose. That's my passion. And I know then that when I'm with a family, I know I can sit and truly listen. When they're talking about, like I said, about the food, if some companies, or some people are going, oh, my person starved, they didn't drink, they were so dehydrated, the hospital wouldn't set up a drip. If I know that I can offer some kind of education with that to go, but actually they wouldn't set up a drip because a dying body can't process that fluid. Like, it's not going to go to the organs. It's not going to be able to hydrate the skin because those complex processes that a body goes through, they're not working anymore because the body's dying. Sometimes those simple bits of, oh my gosh, so they weren't dehydrated, they weren't starving, they weren't dying of thirst, like they were okay. Yeah, they were okay because that's the normal process of dying. So to be able to come up with the education, I know is hugely, valuable to people. But actually, I've had people contact me purposely going, I chose you because I know that you get it. I chose you because to see that you worked at your local hospice, my person died at the hospice. Or I've chosen you because I see you do this death education. And actually, I really valued my mum's death because I got to sit with her and experience A, B, and C. There's so many, it enhances my reputation. And from a business perspective, people have more trust in me, which, I value so much. People know that actually I bring more to the table. I can hold space for those emotions on a deeper level. I can sit in that discomfort of their grief. And also because I understand people, well, no, I take that back. No one understands people. Because I understand maybe the process that those people may have gone
Yeah.
through, when they're talking to me, I can read between the lines a little bit better to get more out of them about their person for the funeral. So all of my years' experience brings so much to the table with every person I support. But that's why also a lot of celebrants have done my death education program, because they then know that when they're with those families, they have one, it's accredited, so it's formal education. They can prove to funeral directors and any other organizations going, actually, I take my job really seriously. I've invested in myself so I can invest more into my families. So it's the same as anything. More knowledge, more understanding is never a bad thing. To go in, why would you want to sit and hold space for somebody in the darkness with them in their despair without having something in the locker, without your own backup, without your own. Some people have found it more like therapy. Doing the education means that they've processed a little bit more of their grief. They have a deeper understanding of what they may have witnessed or experienced or heard about. So actually, when they go to a family, they can also then go, yeah, I need to leave that behind because that's my experience, not theirs. So it's healing, it's growth, it helps all of us evolve on some level to do this, to bravely go and delve into our own thoughts and feelings about mortality. So, personally and professionally. So yeah, it's only ever all my years of experience and the experience I continue to get only ever fuels my work further.
And I absolutely agree with what you're saying about training, because it really does allow you to look at your own self, your own world, and what's gone on. I mean, I did my end of life facilitation training so that I can help people with planning for end of life while my mom was going through dementia and obviously getting progressively worse. But then when it came to her dying, and that period of time, that month that turned into the 10 days of no food, no fluids, I knew what to expect. It was still an unbelievable reality, because
Of course.
reading about it, learning about it is not the same as sitting through it. However,
No.
it helped me to process what I was going through while my mum was suffering with dementia, and also through her end and through her death. So you're right, it really does. Any type of education and continuing education really does help on so many levels, on so many levels.
Yeah, yeah. We
So
say things like knowledge is power, and it's true. And I agree what you say, though. Having this understanding mentally is one thing. We're never ready or prepared to lose somebody we love. So all the education in the world is never going to take away the grief. I'm not, it doesn't fix everything and make it all okay, but it does add that tiny 0.01%. It takes away that doubt. It takes away some of the questions, and it adds to your peace of mind knowing that what you're seeing or witnessing is hopefully very natural and very normal. So, it doesn't make things better or easier. And I say knowledge is power. It doesn't make you powerful in those situations. If anything, you feel completely powerless. But ongoingly, you put something in the locker in advance that you know is going to serve you later.
yeah.
Essentially, at some point you're able to then go, when it happens and your person's not eating, for example, and it's so hard and it goes against the grain, and you'll fight against all your instincts to push for your person to eat because that's what we should do. But there'll be something going, but actually, if they don't eat, it's okay. And that's that tiny little bit of stress that you don't then need to carry. So other tiny question, that other niggling doubt that could pop up 6 months down the line into your grief that actually you know is not going to happen. So, and it's those things, and it's like investing, knowing that you might not feel the benefits straight away. Same as therapy.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? You go through
no,
therapy knowing that, the end goal is something a lot lighter, or there's something to be achieved in some way. This kind of does that. You're investing in yourself to bank it, to then use it, hopefully, as you go along. But fundamentally, then when somebody does die, you've approached it in the most open way possible. You've approached it having some kind of education. And also it comes with hints and tips of what to do. It comes with the, yes, this is normal, and you can't necessarily do this, but you could do this instead. Now you can't do that anymore, but have you thought about this? Now this might be what you're used to, but now you might need to get used to this. So it gives you that kind of, oh, okay, so I'll shift from this mindset to this one. And then help that transition of the doing, which we all are very good at doing stuff, and we're not very good at just being.
no,
So it helps all of that as well. And it's sometimes it's only on reflection when you look back and go, oh, actually, I'm so glad I knew that, because I could just be with mum. I could actually just sit and make my own cup of tea and hold her hand rather than worrying about how much she was drinking. Or understanding that her skin was dry and that no drip was going to make a difference. I could actually just enjoy sitting and rubbing cream into Nan's hands, or putting her face cream on and brushing her hair was actually just as powerful than maybe what the medicines were doing. It's that connectedness, it's the humanness. And that's, again, everything that I hope to try and achieve, is bring death back into the heart of community, back into our own hearts, back into accepting that this is part of life. No matter how much you want to avoid it, you can't.
no, no.
So I get
Unfortunately,
very brave heart with this stuff.
yeah. Well, I can understand why.
Mm.
It's lovely listening to you talk about it. From our conversation before we went live that I'm just as passionate, but this is obviously about hearing about your story. So, if people would like to get hold of you, how do they do it?
My face pops up everywhere on social media and lots of podcasts and things like this. But essentially, my website, ktcsoulmidwife.com, and it's got the four main things on there, and you can click each one. So, funeral celebrancy, soul midwifery, education, and consultancy. There's information on there as well. It might just be that people need to learn or understand a little bit. There's loads of stuff. And then obviously, then contact me through there, or Facebook, Instagram, and the usual LinkedIn and all the other stuff that I'm trying to keep up with.
This is the
But
thing.
yeah, I
There's
do a
so
lot of.
many.
Oh, there is, but again, I'm really keen to try and. It was thanks to social media that kind of grew my presence to help put me out there. So that also shows me that there is a need and a want. People do want to engage, or at least connect. Because if you build it, they will come. I hope to make a lot of the information accessible. I share a lot of my Dime for a Cuppas. The education program is Dime for a Cuppa, the masterclass, but the Dime for a Cuppa session started off as just me waffling on about a topic, sharing information. And that's what I hope to do with all of my social media. And as you put it out there, it shows me people do want to learn. They do want to understand, or they do just want to have a space where they can delve in every now and again if they want to, and not be seen as weird, because there's nothing weird in my world. So again, all over socials, and there's videos, there's education, there's lots of free information out there as well. So
Well, thank you very much for your time today. I really do appreciate talking to you again, Katie. It's been lovely.
thanks, Dayle. Thank you.